folks from DeWitt Redeemer here to answer your questions, and we'll have hopefully by then like a tentative plan, adoption plan drawn up, and so you can ask questions about that and ask them whatever questions you have. And those will be in a couple of weeks. We'll have 2 different weeks, like the first week of May and the last week of April, something like that. We'll have those meetings, and we'll let everybody know when they are. When I get the dates all firmed up, I just don't have the dates confirmed yet. So I'll go see if I can do something about the sound. But let me pray first, and then Dirk can begin. And we are videoing it so that people who aren't here can watch it. So that's why Don's doing the video. So let's just pray. Gracious God, we again thank you for this beautiful day and for the joy that you bring into our hearts. Open our hearts and our minds and our ears to listen to your voice as we consider this adoption process, as we consider all that Dirk has to tell us, as we just listen for where you are leading us, O Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. And I'm going to stall a little bit because the second slide that I'll be using is a video, and so we'll need the sound for that. So I'll stall while Ellen is working on that. It's good to be with you today, and hopefully I can answer some of the questions and explain some of what a church adoption is. It is relatively new, especially in our United Methodist circles. We've not been doing this very long. Right now we have three adoptions that have been completed in the 2 conferences, or the one new conference together, and the video shows little pieces from all 3 of those adoptions. We've got another church adoption that they will be voting in 2 weeks from today. Both churches will have a church conference, be voting at the same time, and coming together in an initial straw poll that they took, a non-binding straw poll. Whoa, there we go. In that initial straw poll, there was only 1 dissenting vote out of either church. So we're pretty confident that's going to go through. We've got a couple other adoptions that they're in the process of talking about it, like you all are, and we'll be moving forward with those. So the 3 that you'll see focused on in the video, one is Cornerstone. Cornerstone over in Grand Rapids. It's the largest church in the conference, and they have adopted another campus, South Wyoming campus is what they call it, a United Methodist church that was struggling. They were at about, I think they were about 40 or 50 in attendance, struggling, and Cornerstone partnered with them, came alongside them, adopted them, and they're doing very well now. Another one is a lot more close to home, Sycamore Creek. You're familiar maybe with Sycamore Creek Church. They adopted Potterville United Methodist down in Potterville, so made that an additional campus of Sycamore Creek. And then in Bay City Grace Church reached out and adopted the Fremont Avenue Church. Fremont Avenue was probably going to have to close if something didn't happen, and so Bay City Grace came alongside, partnered with them, and adopted them, and they're continuing to move forward now in a fairly healthy way. An adoption basically is when a larger, healthier church, usually with more resources, comes alongside and agrees to partner with another church, usually a smaller church, although sometimes across the nation I've seen churches of equal size come together and partner and have that kind of an adoption. But it's usually more of a larger church that we call a parent church, adopting a smaller church, working with them, sending people to them, sending resources, helping to strengthen them, helping the church being adopted to adopt the DNA, the way that they do things at the parent church, and but it becomes part of the parent church. So it's one church with two campuses or multiple campuses. I want us to see the video. I'll go through a few more slides, hopefully answer some of your questions just through the PowerPoint slides. And then as we move on toward the end of it, I'll open it up for any questions that you might have. So let's see if this video will start at this time.
Is that on the side?
I think so.
To the left. Or the right one.
Yeah.
There you go.
There we go.
Okay.
We were a stuck church, and we didn't want to be a dying church.
We were trying to do outreach, trying to grow, and it just wasn't quite working for us.
People were having a hard time. It was almost like you could tell when you showed up that they were struggling.
Fremont Avenue United Methodist Church found itself in such a predicament that it was unable to sustain itself.
Rather than signs of life, there were signs of discouragement.
This opportunity came around at the right time for us to, partner with another historic church.
South Wyoming congregation had struggled. They may have had about 80 people at one time. Attendance had fallen to about 50.
We didn't want to be that dying church. We didn't want to see our doors closed. We were hungry for change, and God answered our prayers by bringing us to Sycamore Creek.
There's a change happening in Potterville. Would you all be interested in exploring adoption there? And we said, yeah, we would. That'd be great.
We had the opportunity to adopt a church in South Wyoming.
It wasn't something we were looking into, but we felt that was the answer from God.
One of the things I saw here at the Potterville campus was a lot of uncertainty and fear about the unknown. What was this going to look like? What was going to happen?
Well, this adoption process has been filled with incredibly difficult to be adopted.
So it was a little bit difficult to think about, number one, growing so much, so fast.
I think when you're talking about adoption, there's a sense of loss in the congregation.
And number two, possibly losing some of the tradition that we had, as South Wyoming United Methodist.
There's new ways of doing things, and some of the old ways, we're not doing them that way anymore.
It's really the beginning of a new chapter of ministry.
It's been both a give and a take. Changes on both sides, excitement on both sides, things that both have brought to the table.
There was a lot of humility in the process as we voted.
We weren't here to necessarily take over as much as we were to come alongside and join together as a new multi-site community.
That's one of the strengths of a campus adopting another, when you can bring resources of people and leadership and financial resources they just don't have.
Some of the leadership that was already here at this church was just really spectacular, and the energy, the enthusiasm, the faith, their love of Jesus has inspired us as well.
And almost immediately, within a couple weeks, we began to see signs of life. And there was a newfound joy and excitement in worship.
New faces are coming into the building, new opportunities to get to know people. We're continuing to grow. South Wyoming United Methodist 2 years ago was averaging about 35 in attendance on a weekend.
The congregation now averages between 300 and 400 people.
What I was hoping for from the very beginning, it's exciting to see that come to fruition now.
We're seeing people here at Potterville who are coming to church for the first time. We've seen a 30 to 40% increase in attendance over last year.
Through this adoption and all the new life that we have in Potterville, we don't want us to just stay there and just celebrate what's happening there. We want to continue to reach out into the community.
I think the biggest challenge is realizing, again, this is one church in two locations, not two churches in two locations.
I would say that 80 to 90% of those fears that people had never materialized. There were all of these strengths and excitement and motivation that happened.
I really believe we're in an era where no church has to close anymore.
This church, again, is alive and vibrant. And I think that's one of the better things that we can point to as saying what came out of the adoption.
This is a really viable way to grow your church.
I think if more churches were willing to be adopted or engage in adoption and learn the processes that go along with that, I think there's an amazing story yet to be told.
We thought we were reaching out to the community, but actually we were more focused inwardly.
This is not the church. The church is out there. We do church here as a church to encourage each other, but the church is out in the community.
We've seen an excitement and enthusiasm regarding our worship services that has drawn people in.
God is the God of redemption, and He proved it in this adoption model.
So I really encourage churches that have some strength to think about adopting, and we can teach the process, we can learn from each other, and I think we can still grow the kingdom of God for Christ.
Okay, so that gives you an overview of what those three churches have experienced. You saw that the South Wyoming campus of Cornerstone went from, I think, 50 to over 300. But Cornerstone itself is worshiping over 4,000. So it's a large church, and so when they partnered with the other church, they wanted to see another large church. Potterville, on the other hand, was about 50, 60, and now there's 70, 80, maybe 90. So still a fairly small church. Same with Bay City Grace, their East Campus, the former Fremont Avenue. They were at about 40 before the adoption. They're probably 60 or 70 at this point. So not a phenomenal amount of growth, but enough to make it feel like the sanctuary is more full rather than more empty on Sunday morning. So some ideas of why you should be even interested in an adoption. One is to be able to do ministry better together than you could do it separately. With the added resources of DeWitt Redeemer, you might be able to do more areas of ministry than you're currently doing. You might be able to do some areas of ministry in an easier, healthier way. Let's take Vacation Bible School as an example. DeWitt Redeemer has a really great, vibrant Vacation Bible School. They put a lot of effort into it. They have a lot of staff because it's a larger church. They have a lot of people involved in it. On the other hand, when you might do a Vacation Bible School, you might struggle for enough teachers, and a lot of the teachers that are going to be teaching it and helping to lead, you're also already involved in a lot of other things in the church, right? Mm-hmm. Am I on target?
Yeah.
Okay. So why should both churches do all the preparation work to do Vacation Bible School? What if Redeemer Church, along with a number of folks from this church, work together to develop Vacation Bible School, and then you hold it in two different locations, but you've got all the groundwork done on it, all the preparation work done on it, you're just holding it twice. So you see how the added resources can really benefit rather than having to reduplicate everything. A lot of what you can do is borrow from Redeemer Church because you're partnering in your one church with them. Another part of adoption is every church goes through a life cycle. Every church started at one point at birth. It grows through what we call adolescence to adulthood, just like every person has a life cycle. You start at birth, you grow to adulthood, you go down toward retirement, and then finally at death. The difference between a church and a human is that you can restart that life cycle again. So you can go up to a point of maturity, and then you start downward, and the idea is to launch into a second life cycle, another life cycle. And you do that in a lot of different ways. When you start a new worship service, that starts a new life cycle. When you start maybe a building campaign, that might launch your church into a new life cycle. So as you would come into this adoption, it launches your church into a new life cycle. So a new point of birth, a new point of growth, a new point of maturity, and so on. And the idea is to continue to launch into new life cycles. We talk about that a lot in Vital Church Initiative, VCI. through that VCI process, you're launching your church into a new life cycle. So through this adoption, both churches will enter into a new life cycle and new health and new vibrancy as a result of that. Another area is that you want to reach more people for Christ. That's really what we're all about, isn't it? As a church, we want to reach more people for Jesus Christ. We want to make new disciples of Jesus Christ. And so by entering into an adoption, it sets your church in a stage where you'll be more outward focused. Some of the ideas that Redeemer will bring in is to help you be more outward focused. But also the community will see that there's something new going on here. You'll probably have a new name. I don't know what that name will be. At Potterville, it was Potterville United Methodist Church. Now it's Sycamore Creek Potterville Campus. So they kept the Potterville campus. The cornerstone was Wyoming United Methodist Church, and now they've called it the South Wyoming Campus of Cornerstone. In Bay City, they didn't want to continue the name of Fremont Avenue, which is the location where the church was. They wanted it to take on the Bay City Grace name, so they renamed the parent campus the West Campus. So Bay City Grace West Campus, and then the Fremont Avenue is called the East Campus. And so what that name will be, we're not sure. That'll be something of discussion over the next few weeks. But as you take on that new name and you begin to advertise the new name and the new partnership, there will be people in the community that will be intrigued by that, intrigued by the changes, and want to look into that, and you'll be able to attract new people into the congregation. And another idea is just to make a greater difference in the community as you become more outward focused, and as you're partnering with a much larger church, they have much more resources to reach out to more people. Another idea is that you want to multiply the church's impact by being a campus of Redeemer. You can multiply as I've already said, the ministries and involvement that you're in around the community. But you'll also leverage that legacy of your church, the reputation, the good reputation you have in this community. You'll be able to leverage that by that partnership, but also leverage the good name and reputation that Redeemer has. So together, it's going to help both congregations as you move forward. You'll be able to maximize the church's facilities. Any guess how many days a week Redeemer Church is open and has activities in it? 7 days a week. How about St. John's First?
5.
5, okay. So as you partner with Redeemer, they'll just by habit have more opportunities to ministry out of here, and there'll be more activity and more involvement to reach out into the community and to make better use of our facilities. And then, all in all, it helps to make you a stronger, healthier congregation. So just the stages that we'll move through over the next few months. The stages of an adoption are exploring, and that's what you're doing right now. You're exploring whether this is a good approach for you to take as a congregation. And then part of that is getting along. Can you get along with folks at Redeemer? Is this going to be a good match, and will it be a good fit? It's just as if you're adopting a child. Some of the steps that you have to go through is that you explore whether you want to be an adopted parent and have an adoption and how that changes your life. You want to see if you get along with that child or not. I have a real good friend that he's much younger. He was in my church, my first church that I pastored, and he and his wife adopted a child. They never went through with the adoption because within the first 2 months of having regular contact with that child, they realized that this was not going to be a good fit. That child just didn't fit their family and wasn't a good fit, so they called off the adoption. So can you get along with Redeemer? And then I lost this. And then preparation. What preparations do you need to go through in that adoption process? And then finalizing the adoption, that's the vote on whether you adopt or not, whether you move forward. And then the bonding, really coming together as one congregation. Yes?
I want to say both churches have to vote too.
Yes. Both churches have to vote on this. And typically we'll do that at a church conference on the same day. A church conference or a charge conference. And that'll happen on the same day. And neither one, they'll open both ballots along with your DS at the same time. So it isn't like you all will vote and then Redeemer will vote, or they'll vote first. You'll both vote the same day. So deciding if the merger, or if the adoption is in your future is this first step. So some of the questions that you all need to ask is, what's going to happen to our pastor or the other staff that we have as a church? And as you look forward with that, excuse me just a minute. As you move forward, all these are questions that Redeemer will need to answer primarily. But they're questions that you have at this time. One part about it, I think you know what's happening to your pastor. I hope so. Hope I'm not letting anything out of the bag right now. Your pastor's retiring. She's going to be moving. So this comes at a great time. Other staff, Redeemer may want to retain part of the staff, or may bring in people that are already in at Redeemer and that have been trained in the DNA of Redeemer and understand the mission, vision, the values of Redeemer, may come to work with you. So that's a question that we'll have to answer in the next few weeks ahead. Your church board and your committees. One of the easy answers on that is you're going to be one church with 2 campuses. So you don't need 2 leadership boards, 2 administrative councils. There'll be only one leadership team. I think that's what you call it at Redeemer, leadership team. There'll only be one of those. And most likely, some of the leaders from here will be asked to be a part of that leadership team. Now, different pastors, different churches have handled that different ways. One of the adoptions that I've watched for a number of years, one of the leading churches that have done a few adoptions over the years is Ginghamsburg down in Dayton, Ohio. And the way they handle it there is one representative from the church being adopted that comes onto the leadership team of Ginghamsburg, just to give voice to that church, make sure that those needs are being taken care of. But the full leadership administrative council that you would have in the way Ginghamsburg does not go on. Other churches have invited 2 or 3 or 4 of the leaders to be a part of that. Excuse me. Been fighting a cold the last week, and it's getting to me a little bit. The other committees, most of the other committees will may continue on. PPR committee will not continue on because it's one campus, Redeemer, so their PPR or SPR will be the SPR that will oversee all the campuses and all the staff. Now they may invite some of the folks that are on your current PPR or SPR to be a part of theirs. That's up to Redeemer in this process. Other committees, the worship committee, They probably would want to stay on in some case, but again, that will be up to Redeemer. So those would be questions that you would want to ask in the town hall meeting. The church's facilities. Thank you. The facilities. They become the property of Redeemer Church. So if you need a new roof, you don't have to pay for it. Redeemer has to pay for it. Now you're part of Redeemer if you go through with the adoption. So of course your giving will be part of that as well. But they are responsible, and their trustees are responsible for the upkeep of this facility. Finances, likewise, you're one church with multiple campuses. So your offering on Sunday morning automatically goes and joins in with Redeemer's offering. But out of that, they pay all your bills. So just like if you were adopting a child, you know, they're going to take care of you. And so that's a big part of it. Your offerings go to them to become part of it's one church. It's no longer two churches. It's one church. And then membership. Effective the day that the adoption takes place. Let's just say it's first Sunday of July, July 1st, 2018. If that's the Sunday that the adoption takes place, your membership, you become a member of Redeemer Church, effective that day. Probably there'll be some kind of a part of the worship service that you will have some kind of vows that you're saying, that just like when you became a member of this church, that all the churches together would become all the people together would become part of that larger congregation. Also, who decides? So you all decide, as well as all the people at Redeemer. It's a church conference vote. So at a church conference, those that can vote are members of the church. So if you're a full member of First United Methodist Church, you get to vote. Also provided that you're present. There's no absentee balloting that day, nor at any church conference or charge conference. So you must be here to vote. And then there's a provision for other elders that might be a part of your affiliate, part of your congregation. They would get to vote as well. So again, you've got to be a member of this church and you've got to be present. And likewise, those that meet that criteria at Redeemer get to vote there. It's a simple majority. The simple majority here and a simple majority there. Both vote to move forward with the adoption. Then it's final. One of the things that will change, one of the biggest things that will change is the mission, the vision, and the values. I'm not sure what your mission statement is here. Can somebody tell me? How about the vision statement?
Sharing Jesus Christ through worship, prayer, study, and service.
Okay, all right. And what's the mission and vision at Redeemer?
Packed with.
Okay, yeah.
I can only think of pack. I'm so sorry.
Okay, all right. But effective the day of the adoption, you would also be adopting their mission and vision. And the values would be part of what's shared over time, so that you share those values with them as well. So your mission and vision, though, will change because you're one campus with them. And then the lead church, some of their questions is that they're going to be looking at as they're trying to decide whether to vote yes to adopt you is there growth potential here? They won't want to adopt a church that has no growth potential. I worked with the church over the last several months in one of the Detroit suburbs, and they were looking at a church to adopt. Attendance was about 40 to 50. parking space, though, they had 12 parking spaces. Almost no really available off-street parking either. So you're really limiting the size of that congregation. Now, 50, 60, 100 years ago, when everybody walked to church, that it was a neighborhood church, and that worked really well. You didn't need 12 parking spaces. But today, when everybody drives, and so they struggled with that. The church is also on 3 different levels, and the sanctuary isn't as big as your sanctuary. Total seating would have been less than 100. And so they're saying, okay, is there growth potential here? There's not adequate parking. The building is on 3 different levels. So with that size, we can't even afford to put in an elevator. And they just kept going, ticking off all the things that would not work, and finally decided no, that they did not want to adopt that church. So is the adoption even possible? Is it possible that, or are there too many other obstacles that people are dead set against it for some reason? What about feasibility? Does the building need a lot of work? In this one that I was talking about in the Detroit suburb, they also had only 1 restroom on the main level, and it wasn't handicap accessible. It wasn't ADA up to standards. So one of the things they were going to have to do immediately was upgrade all that. It didn't have a sound system. I mean, there was so many things that were going to need a lot of money poured into it. It was going to need totally repainted. It was going to need a new roof within the next year or 2. So there was going to be a lot of money. And another thing they decided against it on was because it's not financially feasible for us to do that. Is the adoption desirable? Is it going to benefit both congregations? That's one of the things that they'll be looking at. And is it DNA compatible? Are the beliefs such that you're compatible? Now, you're both United Methodist churches, so the basic beliefs and our polity are the same. So that's a big obstacle, or a big advantage. Sometimes there are, especially if you were thinking about adoption from a non-United Methodist church, there might be larger issues there around beliefs and polity that might distract and make it so that you wouldn't want to move ahead. Both churches should be asking, what is God's vision? What does God want to do through this? Is this God's plan, God's idea? Or is it just plans of that a few leaders have come up with? And so I would encourage you to be about prayer, a lot of prayer. In fact, one of the things that highly recommend is that one of the very first steps is that you develop a prayer team that's going to be meeting together with some of the folks from Redeemer, just praying about whether this is God's will for both congregations. Is this what God wants? And then how can we best reach more people with this good news message of Jesus Christ? Can we do it better if we're doing it together? Or are we better off keeping separate churches? So what does that look like for you? And then are we better off together than we are separate? And that's a question that both churches need to really struggle with and answer. So the next step is getting along, determining if there is compatibility. Is our fundamental doctrine and practice about the same? So, and from my outward appearance, I would think so, and I think Ellen and Rod, as they've talked together, they are in agreement that both congregations are fairly compatible. Are we similar enough to merge? Those are just all those compatibility questions. Can we get along? And do we like those people? That's a good. How many of you know folks that go to Redeemer Church? So okay, a number of you do. Do you like them? Okay, good. That's a good thing. That's a real good thing. So, and then are there any issues that might prevent us from merging? So those are things that you all need to answer and that I couldn't answer for you. And then the next step would then be preparing. What do we need to do? The town hall meetings, the listening sessions is really important. Now, Rod would have liked to have been here today, but frankly, he had something more important to do. His grandson was being baptized at Redeemer today. So, he thought that was more important than being with you. I don't know. And you'd agree with that, I'm sure, especially grandparents would. So, but he'll be at the future listening session or town hall meetings. And then doing a feasibility study, and that's really on them, that's not on you. They need to, and they'll probably come and meet with the trustees pretty soon to see if there's stuff that needs to be done here, work that needs to be done, and what your trustees have been planning on doing over the next few years so that they can understand how their finances might need to be allocated. One of the other ones, the one that's going to vote in 2 weeks, they have determined that that this year alone, they're going to need to put about $100,000 into the building that they're adopting, with another $150,000 next year to bring it up to the standards that they want to. But part of it is an all-new sound system, new video system, so a lot of new lighting, brand new lighting in the whole building, a lot of changes that are going to need to be made. So that's their feasibility study, and then a financial plan that goes along with that. How are we going to fund this? Redeemer will be sending a campus pastor that's going to be the new pastor here. How's that going to be funded? And so all of that needs to come into play, mostly from Redeemer's point of view. And then there is an idea, some adoptions,